One time for the one time, two time for the two time. Welcome home, Stars Dem. You are tapped back in with Northstar politics, pushing political imagination.
Come
You're
on.
here with myself, Noah East 9, the Mile Malcolm X. We didn't land on Bethnal Green. Bethnal Green landed on us, but you already knew that. The little boy from Bo E3, Slimatar Herbatov live in the flesh. And I'm, of course, joined by who else? Sean Ramiz on each and every platform.
Yes, sir.
Enfield Eric Williams, Biblical Jesus, DreamWorks Moses, let the people them free.
Come on. Wagwan alaikum, wagwan, stars them. Obviously, you know, we're already on the Oliver Twist thing. So before we even get into the top tier political analysis, the best you can see on the internet, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and actually just tell us how you feeling about the new year, man. Happy New Year, guys. Come on.
Treat it like a register. Every time you tap in with the boys, yeah, just when you enter, just little like, subscribe, comment. The comment sometimes I get maybe people are feeling a bit performance anxiety, but just definitely that like's got to be there.
I mean, we read everything, absolutely everything. Speaking of,
before we even get there, the fact that I read everything, shout out to Femi. Just
no, I wanted to do it. Gosh, I wanted to do that because I replied to this comment, not you.
Loyal supporters in the comments here saying, why can't I get a shout out? There you go, my brother. We appreciate you. But yeah, like I haven't been reading everything this week.
Well, famously, you haven't been reading everything this week. You can't read everything this week because it's going to send you to therapy. That's why.
Trust me. So I was getting cooked this week. Only on Instagram though. The TikTok for that clip. There was a clip about therapy.
If you log back into the TikTok, if you log back into the TikTok, you'll get cooked.
Oh, the tide turned.
Yeah, the tide did turn. Unfortunately.
You know, is where like cool, like between me and Sean, we've got like complementary skills because Sean's very good with like digital online stuff. Like I'm famously just an analog caveman. So like the lucky part of that is like just log out.
No, but come on, you do have to sort of respond to. I guess when you do sort of step into the online sphere and you got a podcast mic in hand and you want people to take you seriously, you do have to like respond to their criticisms to some extent.
Yeah, no, I am half joking. In all seriousness, it's interesting because I think with the section we have, Let Me Land, which if people remember all the way back, maybe we need to reframe it each week. People remember all the way back to the first episode. It was kind of me and Sean setting it up as a different way to develop our thinking, basically to put out the extreme and then have the other person as a co-loc to work it towards like a happy medium. But I guess when you're clipping that, and Basayo felt this the week before, obviously, with her Nigel Farage tape, when you're clipping that, it's hard to have that full context.
Yeah, it definitely is hard to have the full context, but I do think the good criticism that came out of it is that obviously, I mean, we're smart. We know what we're doing to some extent as well. Yeah, we're taking it to the extreme, but we do want to catch attention on these clips, which in the game of social media, because it's the attention economy, the sort of opportunity cost of scrolling is so high. So it's really important for us, we're just in that kind of mindset of how can we grab attention so people can actually watch this clip. But I think moving forward, we'll definitely have a bit more sort of nuanced hooks for attention.
Yeah, it is interesting because I guess I've always thought of like the podcast is what we're doing, is where we're developing our thoughts. That's what we're held accountable to. And then in my mind, it's like every short form thing we do is just like advertising.
Yeah,
then,
of course.
I guess obviously some people are interacting with the short form only. So you kind of have to be cognizant of that. But I was also appreciative of the fact that we've got a very literate audience in the comments. There was a psychologist in the comments giving some real like, academic literature there. It actually propelled me to do some reading. It was really good. People got in contact. I actually appreciate that healthy sort of conversation.
Yeah, and in the earlier weeks when we did my little clip around Marxism and the tensions with like Islamic kind of metaphysics, there was a guy who reached out to, one of the guys who's basically mainly cooking me in those comments. I kind of just reached out to him. I was like, damn, like you know your stuff, and we actually just got chatting, and now we're friends. He's always in my story likes. So that's what it's about though. Like I think as well, one thing I'd also sort of like push back on from what people were kind of like commenting as well was like, oh, delete this right now. Like people will come in with some sort of audacity to think that they can just comment whatever and say delete this, and just I don't know, they take to it in a very sort of aggressive way. And like as two brothers from ends, it's like, all right, if you want us to delete this, yeah, We'll tell you where we're filming it. Come pull up. Make us delete it then.
Even with the delete this thing, it's like I guess as well, maybe a lot of people that are interacting with that saying, "Oh, delete this," aren't people that tune into the full podcast, maybe aren't aware that like kind of within our mission statement is us just wanting to have that ability to discuss things more openly and have those repeated interactions with people. So it's not a case of, "Oh, you're wrong, therefore delete this," or "There's I don't like this, take therefore whatever, like F you." It's more just like, okay, like I was reading the comments, it's very interesting. People put forward different opinions, and I guess it's hard sometimes because obviously the full context is in like the mid-form clip that we put out, but then people are less likely to interact with that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, yeah, just the last thing on that is that I think moving forward, we'll definitely be a bit more careful on and a bit more nuanced on the hooks on topics that actually matter and are important on things such as therapy. Because obviously, yeah, it can be quite harmful to see two kind of young, supposedly smart guys talking about it and trying to turn people off. But also
It's
just a
interesting.
reminder. Yeah, just one
Go
last
ahead.
point, but just a reminder around Northstar is that we're not really on this cancel culture thing. Like we believe in failing in public, and so I don't think we're going to be that receptive to calls to kind of like take things down if it's not really like an extreme thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as I become more, I guess, confident on mic and as like a public facing person, maybe later down the line, I'll give more of an in-depth discussion around like therapy and mental health and my own personal journey. But I think behind the scenes, a lot of it is informed by things that would give me a bit more maybe credibility or understanding that doesn't come across when you're just giving the sort of academic or theoretical take. But I appreciate people because I've been able to save money on my heating bills just getting cooked up in the comments. So it's been all right in that sense. But my brother, how you doing? It was the festive week. Obviously, Merry Eidmas to you, Merry Christmas to me and other people that celebrate.
No, it's not. It's not Merry Eidmas. It's Christmas Mubarak. Thank you very much.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Jingle halal and all them kind of thing there. But Sean's coming like he really is show salad this week, you know, because Sean, even his mum's story, yeah, pre and bare Christmas trees, everything I've got. But what you been up to, bro? You been watching the AFCON?
No, you know I haven't been watching the AFCON, bro. Listen, this guy always tries to get me on like not watching football. Listen, I don't watch football. I play football. Do you understand?
Say
The
less. If people are watching AFCON, my technique, what I do is I pick a team that I liked from last one and I follow them, and whoever they get beaten by, I kind of just daisy chain. So I started with
Fairs.
Equatorial Guinea. They got beaten by Burkina Faso. So I was thinking, okay, we're on a Burkinabe thing, Thomas Sankara, Ibrahim Traore. But then they got peppered by Algeria. So I'm with the Algerians right now, which is cool.
Yeah.
'Cause I grew up with
Look,
Algerians.
and come on now, they got a little revolutionary background as well, 1962. So,
There we go. Come on now. I feel like Frantz Fanon just lurking with the Algerians.
but yeah, everything's been good to be honest. I mean, Canada's beautiful at this time of year. It definitely like I am literally snowed in, and it's just nice to spend some time with family to be honest, and just also just take a break because I know in the new year things are going to be so hectic because obviously we both work alongside doing this as well. This is ramping up, so I just need to kind of take the time before yeah we get ready to really take it to the North Star in
It's been a
2026.
it's been a lovely festive period, honestly, bro. Like the weather, even today in London, I call it perfect weather when it's crisp, cold, clear skies. I've been doing a lot of cycling, got some new cycling stuff for Christmas. It's been cracking. I can't even lie. Rest, reading, been tuning into the rap beef. Let's see it in the comments. Who knows what I'm talking about there? How London are we really? Like, who knows about that in the comments? But no, today's gonna be a good episode. We've got a very international state of play. We're going from Somaliland or Somalia, as some people might call it, to Egypt, all the way to Nigeria, to Cambodia, and a little bit of a look at stuff that's been going on in Britain as well. And then in the echo chamber, we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A like the real YouTubers we become. So I'm looking forward to today. I can't even lie. Let's get into it. Yeah?
Let's get into it.
Okay, so our first story is about the recognition by Israel of the territory or countries they will have it, Somaliland. So people that don't know, Somaliland is a territory in the northeastern section of Somalia. And it's sort of in that hook that Somalia is. It's the part sort of above Ethiopia around sort of the Gulf of Aden. So reporting from the BBC, Israel became the first in the world to declare Somalia as a sovereign state more than 30 years after the region declared independence from Somalia. Somaliland's president called the development a historic moment, but Somalia furiously rejected Israel's move as an attack on its sovereignty. Since then, dozens of countries and organizations, including Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the African Union, have criticized the surprise declaration. Somaliland, which is a breakaway semi-desert territory on the coast of the Gulf of Aden, declared independence after the overthrow of the Somali military dictator Siad Barre in 1991. Its history, and this is kind of predictable, as with a lot of contested regions, as we'll look at in Cambodia later in the episode, its history as a distinct region of Somalia dates back to the 19th century colonial rule, where Somaliland was a British protectorate, known as British Somaliland, until it merged with Italian Somaliland in 1960 to form the Somali Republic. The Somali president, Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, has said that Israel will resort to forcibly displacing Palestinians to Somalia, and its presence in the region is not for peace, but for essentially to stir polemic and to dominate an important shipping avenue. Israel's also, as I said, seeking to control strategically important waterways connecting vital seas of commercial and economic significance, namely the Red Sea, the Gulf, and the Gulf of Aden, the president has said. And in wider media, it's been quite a interesting topic because, weirdly enough, like US politics has somewhat been dominated by Somali presence over the past few months, and this time it seems like the culmination of it. And the US has supported Israel's decision to do this, not vindicating it or affirming it, but has supported Israel's decision to do this. Sean, initial thoughts?
Yeah, well, it is very interesting because I think to some extent, I don't know if blindsided is the right word, but the US were sort of postulating that they would do something like this in the coming year. I think they wrote it in there. I forgot we covered it before, but they released
the national security strategy.
Exactly, yeah, they released that just to talk about their kind of state of the world as they see it, the Trump administration, and they did sort of posit that they would do this. Look, I think we have a lot of Somali friends. London, where we grew up, there's so much influence from Somali culture, and I guess everyone's sort of growing up sort of adjacent to this kind of Somaliland, Somali beef in the playground, who's really like the right claimants of this country. And it's like, you know what, we definitely don't have the XP to comment on who's right or who's wrong in that struggle. There is definitely a tense history, a sort of sad history as well between the two regions. But guys, this is not the way to do it. This is not something to be proud of. This is not something to be happy about. Because I understand if you're from Somaliland, shout out Chunks, you might be feeling conflicted because, it's great to have some sort of independence and being recognized on the global stage. But Israel is not doing this for the good of the Somali people by any means, or the Somalilanders by any means. Also,
Yeah,
I mean,
go
go ahead.
Okay,
I was just.
Oh, look at that Zoom killing us. Don't worry, guys. We'll be back in the studio soon. But I think on this point, it is quite interesting because the Somaliland is a self-governing territory and self-sufficient. And a distinction that's been drawn by a lot of Somalilanders between themselves and Somalia is that Somaliland is relatively peaceful, whereas Somalia, especially in the early 2000s, was in what would be formally described as a state of anarchy. And there's a lot of problems with militant militias. But I want to bring in a few points here. So one is obviously the colonial remnants of it. And you hear this all the time in maybe like right-wing circles that, forget about colonialism. Well, it's not causing a problem. They happened however long ago. But we're seeing clear structural implications of the colonial remnants of how Africa was partitioned in the modern day. Deaths occurring, the inabilities for governments to form solidified states, etc., because of clear colonial partitioning. I also want to get a little bit theoretical, if you'll allow me to do so.
Go ahead. I'll allow you.
So as you know, I love international relations, and I want to bring to people's attentions a theory of international relations called constructivism. And we're going to lean here on the work of a scholar called Alexander Wendt. So for constructivists, in crude terms, they argue that when states interact, they interact not necessarily based on the reality of the situation, but on their impression and idea or sort of perspective of what is really going on. So constructivists would argue that agency and structures are mutually constituted, which implies that structures influence agency and that agency influences structures. Agency can be understood as the ability of someone to act, whereas structure refers to the international system that consists of material and ideational elements. So how does this relate to what's going on with Israel and Somaliland? Well, we understand that Israel is on a mission ever since the early 1900s, but more formally from 1948, to solidify themselves as a recognized sovereign state, an existing and legitimate state. And what a constructivist would put forward is the idea that this idea of a legitimate sovereign state isn't anything tangible or objective. It is merely the construction of ideologies and structures that states share within this international system. So what Israel's really looking to do is through whatever leverage they can, develop a structure around them, a global structure that will reinforce their own recognition, that will reinforce their own agency. So, and obviously Somaliland are trying to do the same thing. So that mutual benefit there by we're going to affirm your statehood. And in affirming your statehood, you will then have a level of legitimacy in affirming our statehood. That makes sense.
No, that definitely does make sense. I think it it's always interesting to understand how these things that what makes things legitimate, because ultimately you need some sort of arbiter to actually enforce the promises and to make sure that the kind of agreements made between like two political agents are actually credible. So like, you know, in the sort of domestic scene, we see that with the state. Okay, so the state really exists, and there's sort of common agreement that the state exists to enforce contracts, etc. But now, if you take it to the kind of international stage, then what really is there to actually enforce these kind of like mutual understandings, agreement, or even peacetime? It really is very fragile, right? And I think that's the thing that you're kind of pointing to, is particularly with what constructivists, because say it again. Constructivists, yeah, argue, and is that the kind of international agreements, right? It's kind of insane, a bit scary to understand how fragile that kind of equilibrium really is between these different countries. I also think like it's important touching on why it's so important for Israel to actually sort of like de facto recognize Somaliland, and that's literally because they just want some extra influence in the area, particularly on that sort of like little kind of Red Sea Gulf channel. That's where the Houthis have just been basically dishing out enough smoke to them.
It's across the water from the Houthis, isn't it? Enough corn coming from them sides. But I think as well, there's a well-trodden path, because there are material interests as well as like ideological interests at play here. And it's weird because even just now I'm speaking, something comes to mind. Like I was in Panama earlier this year, and I was reading up on the history of Panama or whatever. And Panama used to be part of Greater Colombia. And the US in like the late 1800s came to like Colombia, basically said, we want to build this canal through the middle of the continent so that we can half the times of like shipping routes. And Greater Colombia was kind of like, not really feeling it. And France was involved somewhere, it was weird, but they were kind of not really feeling it. So obviously the US just said, okay, cool. Like in that case then, we're just going to support a secessionist movement in northern Greater Colombia. And the first agreement sort of made by the new state of Panama was for the Panama Canal, which is kind of what underpins why Donald Trump was like, we need to regain or reclaim the Panama Canal, because
he wanted to rename it as well, right?
He wanted to rename it, but also reclaim it.
Yeah.
But like very much like sort of put crudely within like a Donald Trumpian idea, Panama only exists because of the US. And what I'm trying to draw there in similarities is the idea of there being both material but also ideological interests paralleling or sort of echo chambering between states. So in the same way that Panama wants to be recognized as a state by a state that has more sort of solidified identity as the US, similarly, Israel and Somaliland are doing the same for one another, as well as there also being material interests, coincidentally both associated around waterways.
No, definitely, and that's really quite interesting what you brought up. I think also what people are probably thinking when they look on this story is like the absolute audacity of a state like Israel to basically do whatever they want on the international sphere, because obviously on the surface of it, sure, recognizing a country doesn't seem that sort of problematic, but obviously their intentions are something quite sinister, particularly for that region, especially like you said, no, if you kind of link it back to the original conception of Israel and its purpose on the global stage. I think we've touched on this a lot, but we are definitely in a new era of this kind of crumbling liberal world order. Like what we're seeing in front of us is basically like a rogue state just acting anyhow, purely because it has the backing of the US, the strongest player in the world.
Yeah, I think as well. Obviously Northstar politics, pushing political imagination. And we said this before, where you can actually look to instances that maybe don't align with your politics to understand how imaginative politics can be. Like Israel is literally, as far as I'm concerned, a manufactured apartheid state, cooked up in the minds of Zionist forefathers in the late 1800s and could have been settled in different continents around the world. But if that's not a testament to what political imagination can create in the real world, I don't know what is. And similarly here, this is literally just the realization, the physical manifestation of political imagination. So on our side of the coin, we should take this in sort of a silver lining way. Inspiring, sure. In the sense of this is what can be achieved purely from ideology being instantiated in the material world.
And that's also something that we want to touch on around the weaponization of imagination is what you're basically saying as well, right? Like to some extent, it's legitimate for others because they have a certain view, because their views kind of align with some sort of sinister status quo. But for us, right, like that, your everyday people, and we're kind of told that it's a bit too idealistic to kind of pursue
Precise,
them
and there's the
ideals.
kind of pessimism that people kind of buy into, which quells or undermines a lot of hope. But I think the Somaliland issue is one that we'll keep people updated on as best we can. I don't also know what the material implications of this will be in terms of the wider global project for Somaliland, because it doesn't seem at this point in time that Somaliland is going to be recognised more broadly as a consensus state by, like, let's say, members of the UN. But what it probably would look to mean, and it's kind of depressing to see how clear this playbook is I assume that Israel will displace Palestinians into Somaliland.
Yeah.
As in, and this just feels like a sort of exchange of resources in terms of legitimacy versus land space for refugees or
And
for
also, I
people being
think that
expelled from their land.
I think also the funneling of a lot of like these kind of new sort of weapons that Israel has as well to Somaliland to kind of secure them as well um, from the greater Somalia. But I'm sure that we have a lot of people who are from that region, who are
One of our boys is out there
Somali
now,
or
taming
yeah,
sheep.
exactly. So
Man like Jaffa.
Somali. So if you're a lander, if you're just Somali, please like leave your comments below. It will be really interesting to hear about your takes because that's probably the most important as well to actually center your
No,
voices.
definitely. Definitely. The second story today comes from Britain by way of Egypt, where we're looking at the British Egyptian journalist Alaa Abdel El Fattah. So he's returned to the United Kingdom after spending nearly 12 years as a political prisoner in Egypt. He was released after a series of hunger strikes, which coincidentally were effective. Our prayers with the hunger strikers in the UK right now. And when he was released, Keir Starmer, his release was sort of organised and achieved by the British state. Keir Starmer said, "I want to pay tribute to Allah's family and to all those that have worked and campaigned for this moment. Allah's case has been a top priority for my government since we came to office. I'm grateful to President Sisi of Egypt for his decision to grant the pardon." The former blogger had been previously jailed in 2011 during Egypt's uprising against former leader Hosni Mubarak. He later emerged as an outspoken critic of El Sisi, who seized power in a military coup in 2013. Now, there was resurfaced tweets after his repatriation to Britain from 2010, where Abdel El-Fattah said he considered killing any colonialist and especially Zionist heroic. We need to kill more of them. In 2012, he posted, he's taking it there, "I am a racist. I don't like white people. Tell us how you really feel." He's also accused of saying police did not have rights and we should kill them all, and referring to the British as dogs and monkeys, so really giving them a taste of their own medicine there. In response to this, been uprising around a lot of the mainstream media or legacy media and a lot of the right-wing press, basically saying he should be deported, he shouldn't have been allowed citizenship in Britain, to the point where even Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, wrote to MPs on Monday night to say the case had been an unacceptable failure and that due diligence procedures had been completely inadequate for this situation. So yeah, these are all from social media posts from a decade ago. Abdel El-Fattah has gone on to apologise unequivocally for his posts after opposition parties called for him to be deported and his citizenship revoked. I think, well, as in, Sean, there's a case that we spoke about in pre-production that you want to liken this to, which I think is quite important to talk about, like legal precedent. But give me your initial response to that as well.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think, I mean, fair enough, Abdel Fattah, you're taking it there.
The man them got to stop tweeting.
Yeah. I think, I mean, obviously, like what he said, like you can't condone any of that. That is a bit crazy. I didn't even really realize the extent to sort of how explicit he was in some of these tweets. But what these are from 2012, so more than 10 years ago. There's people on the other side of the spectrum who have said some crazy nonsense, let alone like who knows what they say in private.
Nah, but even so, it's like, bro, so when Mo Farah was winning gold medals, you were talking about, "I am a racist, I don't like white people." Too far, too far.
No, no, it definitely is too far. But at the end of the day, I'm going to ask you one question, Noah. Is this a British citizen? Was he born in Britain?
I actually don't. I think he got British citizenship through his mum, so he was
Okay.
automatic British citizenship without prior checks. But he's British Egyptian. I'll check if he's actually born in Britain.
Okay, fair
He's a
enough.
British citizen.
Okay, cool. So he's a British citizen, and now you have a bunch of people asking to like re-deport him back. And I don't think people are quite understanding how much of a dangerous precedent this is really setting, particularly for all of us who have some sort of, I guess, connection to another country across the world. In particular, I think what the case that we wanted to compare this to is really the Shamima Begum case, who we actually have some sort of close connection to because we worked quite closely with Tasneem Akunji, shout out Taz, who was
Definitely a legend.
Shamima Begum's family lawyer. And at the end of the day, okay, cool. He said all of this stuff. I mean, I guess because it's in the past, I don't know if you can prosecute anyone on these things that he said, but all right, let's assume you can, right? Let's assume he like committed a
Yeah,
crime
maybe
right
there's something to be
now.
said about him inciting violence, like
Yeah,
perhaps.
sure. Okay, sure. Then as a British citizen, let's just like process him under British law. It's as simple as that. I feel like we
Yeah.
have inherited or adopted such a laissez-faire mentality to our problems as British people, where we think we can just sweep it under the rug by just like dashing them across the world. But that's not really going to solve anything. We actually need to have these difficult conversations around belonging, identity, and have them on our grounds in this country to actually resolve something that can, reach a nice social equilibrium in the long run. Otherwise, how else are we going to get there?
No, I agree in a lot of that. And what I think I want to draw out here is how issues we've kind of fallen from the idea of first principles and principled discussion, principled disagreement, rather than sort of political football. Because the case you bring up, the Shamima Begum case, to remind people, Shamima Begum was a girl from Bethnal Green, big up Bethnal Green. We didn't land on Bethnal Green. Bethnal Green landed on us, who ran away to fight for ISIS. I think she was in Syria and at some point maybe in Iraq, but mainly in
Sorry, so
Syria.
big up Ethel Green. Anyways, there's this girl who was from here. She ran away to fight for ISIS.
It is. You know the thing that made me so crazy about like Shmi Begum is like, why would you ever leave Bethnal Green? Like literally, the streets are paved with gold.
Yeah, El Caf is literally right there. Like,
In it, like, but okay, so. And she was a British citizen, didn't have citizenship in any other country. When she was looking to reach, she went through horrible things as well. She was a teenager at the time. When she looked to return to the UK, obviously she's a terrorist, or been supporting a terrorist group. And the decision was made that she would be made stateless and wouldn't be allowed to return to the UK because she could reasonably seek citizenship in Bangladesh, I believe. And this set a new precedent whereby beforehand, the British state would not make you stateless if you didn't have dual citizenship. But in this case, now says, okay, anyone who could reasonably be able to obtain citizenship in another country, we will make you stateless under certain circumstances. And the reason it is so worrying is because, people like myself, well, actually not me, but people like Sean would be able to be made stateless under certain circumstances because he could attain citizenship in Trinidad.
how?
Plus, and
How? What?
through
That's used to be. What? Why?
through your mum. That's the precedent set by the Shamima Begum case. So
Oh,
let's say
is
you
it?
go off,
It's
yeah,
just because her parents, not because she actually had
yeah.
dual citizenship herself.
That's the difference. She didn't have
Okay,
dual citizenship.
I
It
see.
was judged that she could reasonably be able to obtain citizenship in Bangladesh. And what that also means, for example, is it creates sort of a second tier of citizenship within the UK, whereby, if we take the example, every Jewish person in the UK could be made stateless because they could logically obtain citizenship in Israel. And so when we look at this case here, the reason I say that things are being used as political footballs rather than first principles, that thing of like, I disagree with someone, but I defend their right to say what they said. That sort of principled way of
Yep.
disagreeing. What that would hold then is if we're working from like first principles that we should be the rule of law and blah blah blah, then yeah, I think what Shamima Begum did is terrible. I think some of the stuff that Ala Abdel Fattah said is terrible. But in spite of my sort of visceral repulsion to how they behaved, they should be bound by the same principled legal system that I would have for someone that I agreed with, brought back to the UK and tried under British law. But what's going on here when you see characters like Robert Jenrick and Yvette Cooper and X, Y, and Z is they're doing away with principles. And when their emotions are on one side or their feelings are on one side, we should use the full weight of the law to try and attack this person with whatever weight we can, lacking any sort of principled thinking. And the reason why they're so dangerous, especially for people that, minorities within a country, is because when the roundabout spins, it will be your turn. So it might feel great right now. Let's say perhaps you are like a Jewish member of society, a Jewish Zionist living in the UK, and one of these and you see the Palestine Action stuff levied against people that supporting Palestine. They're prescribed as a terrorist group. You're thinking, yeah, get them as bad as you can because you disagree with them. But let's think about the principles, like the framework that's being designed by that. If now 10 years down the line, you're defending, maybe Jewish people are under persecution in the UK, and you're trying to speak out against that, those same laws could be levied against you, and you would have fought for designing that architecture. So I think there's a few things to bring up there around like principles versus political football playing. I think there's another one of those cases that really draws out, especially the Labour government's intention to use those kind of things.
Yeah, I guess the final thing I have to add to that, because there is something you said that was quite interesting around basically communicating, or I guess being, what's the word? Convincing to the other side that actually, like the Robert Jenricks of this world, that actually, for the sake of our kind of British institutions, the rule of law, we should be very consistent in our principles around this particular point. But I actually don't think they are inconsistent in their principles, because I think we've reached a state of discourse where they're going a level deeper and trying to kind of rip up the kind of structures of the British Constitution, or of our kind of understanding of what British society is. I think we're kind of entering a new age now where they will actually say, like, no, like even the rule of law is wrong. You know what I mean?
No, I agree, but I think that they're kind of sneaking that in. They're sort of Trojan horsing that in.
So they're not being explicit enough.
Precise. I'm trying to make people more aware of that.
Yeah, fair.
That, for example, like there isn't a perfect parallel, but we think of cases where literally people that fought for the IDF strolling around Oxford Street today, chilling as British citizens, and they fought for the IDF. And Robert Jenrick would never advocate for them being beholden, even though Israel is literally committing war crimes and they've supported an army committing war crimes. They would never be held to the same sort of legal architecture, because it's being one rule for one, another for another.
Sure.
But yeah, I think but he's actually not going to be stripped of his citizenship. But just the polemic around that, I think, is quite telling about how, especially minority ethnics in the UK, are starting to be perceived by the elite.
Yeah, for sure.
Our third story of the day, the Super Eagles are doing well in AFCON, but unfortunately they are not doing well in northern Nigeria, where the US has launched powerful and deadly strikes against militants linked to the Islamic State group. That's ISIS, IS, ISIL, sometimes it's referred to as, where militants have sought to establish a foothold in northwestern Nigeria, President Donald Trump has said. So it's a joint military operation by Nigerian force and the US, largely because the US has the technology and intelligence to conduct these. One town which appeared to have been hit was Jabo, apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, in the northwestern Sokoto state. But historically, there has been no ISIS-linked cells known to operate in this area. In northern Nigeria, people that may be not aware, there are 6 ideological groups, armed groups existing, all of them linked to either ISIS or Al-Qaeda. The current one that is the point of contestation or point of focus for the US-backed military operations is Lakurawa, which is not actually particularly well understood or known, but is the one that is perceived to have been perpetrating this Christian genocide, as Marco Rubio and Donald Trump would have it. I was kind of stunned by this. Because you've seen this narrative of Christian genocide in northern Nigeria for a while, and in the Sahel states, so looking at Niger, Mali, even Burkina Faso in some instances. But I don't know, this took me aback to see the US planning joint military operations to literally launch ballistic missile strikes in northern Nigeria.
Yeah, I mean, again, right, we're at the precipice of this kind of crumbling of the facade of the liberal order, where apparently we have some sort of commitment to international human rights, but then, the people who write that commitment themselves, the US, for example, just go and basically violate all of those previously led principles. I think
What do you think about these lines being drawn? There's this Christian genocide motivation.
Yeah, no, so that's exactly what I was going to say. Like this Christian genocide stuff. Look, is Islamic extremism a problem in that area? Yes, it is. There are quite fundamentalist groups who are they are killing Christians, but they also are killing a lot of Muslims as well. And so it's when people legitimize these airstrikes or this response with a sort of meta narrative that this is the rise of Islamic extremism that we must quell, that we must get rid of, then that doesn't really tell the whole picture or tell the whole story, because there's a lot of evidence and there's a lot of stats and graphs and studies. Maybe we can link one in the description that says that actually a lot of Muslims are also getting killed as well. And so,
Oh, well, no, that is true. That is true. A lot of it is polemics between farming communities in northern Nigeria and the Sahel states, and it is
no, it is, yeah.
kidnap for ransom and these sorts of things.
Yeah, so then it's just like when you have the likes of Marco Rubio and Trump and his administration legitimizing it through this narrative, that actually isn't explicitly true, or is definitely deliberately misleading. We have to ask the question why. Well, why is that actually happening?
Well, I would say it's definitely motivated by a longer term vision for what identities they will coalesce with. So if you obviously like post World War II, the big sort of dividing line was capitalism and communism. So there's an understanding from the US that we will support any sort of capitalist endeavors, and we will try to infringe or undermine any communist promoting endeavors. And it's so interesting, right, to see these sort of attack lines being redrawn along essentially white identity. Because when we talk about Christianity and the understanding that sort of neoconservative Christians have of their religion in the US, whether it be a black person practicing Christianity or otherwise, their understanding of Christianity is oftentimes associated with a proximity to Western whiteness. So this kind of Christian genocide narrative is intrinsically tied to also the South African narrative about white genocide.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, it's the baby formula litmus test, right? Why is that why is it some sort of supposed followers of Christ himself are not even giving out baby formula, let alone justifying the obliteration of townspeople in different countries?
Yeah, and I think it's also concerning because what you see when sort of warmongering states or idealists develop these battle lines around identity is what I've previously described as marginal dehumanization. So, and we understand that dehumanization will justify inhumane acts against the other. And what we're seeing here is as we start to sort of marginally dehumanize, in a lot of ways, it really is Muslims relative to Christians, then it will allow us to perpetuate violence or sort of attacks against Muslim people in a way that previously wouldn't have. So when you see this rhetoric over and over again, we're understanding that a lot of time they're just setting the groundwork for strikes like this. And this is not away from home. This happens in the UK all the time. That it seems as just like sort of a word here, a connotation there, that is just maybe semantic, but these semantics go on to construct, if we go back to our previous topic, construct an ideological framework that permits certain acts.
Yeah, no, and like you say, it's a crystallizing of a new mutation of white supremacy. And
And sorry, go ahead.
no, I think just we should be able to call that out for what it is. But obviously, under this new guise, especially when I feel like as the new town square, so to speak, there's not really a neutral square anymore. I.e., I'm talking about Twitter and X, where a lot of these narratives come out, a lot of these narratives are perpetuated. It feels as if those are inherently delegitimized because people on, I don't want to like kind of split it up into our sides, but our sort of who share our perspective, who see this for what it is, right? This rise of this kind of political Christendom. We are constantly basically, I guess, gaslighted into thinking that no, this is about values. It's all about values, about cultural values. Because look, we're actually helping a bunch of these kind of black Christians over here, when really there's something sinister and deeper going on.
Yeah, and separately to even this, well, not separately, but adjacent, I think Nigeria is honestly an incredibly fascinating country. I'm desperate to visit Nigeria. I didn't want to go for a Detty December. My boy Ezra's out there at the moment. But I think it's an absolutely fascinating country. And especially that blend with the Sahel in Northern Africa, in Northern Nigeria, is something that's not really even centered in the media narrative around Nigeria and what's going on there.
Bro, just come Edmonton.
Is it one of them ones?
Bro, you got a lot of Bengalis in Tower Hamlets. Yeah, you see me growing up in Enfield. I grew up with Naf, Niger, man. Naf. Niger, they don't carry last. Come on.
Come on.
You know how it is.
But it's obviously, as well, just to draw out, because I like to get the smoke and mirrors away from the StarsDem, is in the same week when these attacks were carried out and heavily publicized in the media, the president of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, forgave $4 billion worth of debts from the state oil company NNPC. And this might sound like, yeah, great. Like what? Like a nationalized corporation that runs state infrastructure. The government's forgiving debts. It sounds great. Well, no. In fact, a big reason why he's forgiving these debts, so basically writing off what would have been paid back to the people, would have been paid back to the nation state, is because he's preparing to start to privatize aspects of NNPC. So if you think about it, essentially he's forgiving debts of people like private sort of oligarchs that will be buying up state infrastructure before they bought it, if that makes sense. So like rather than do like some outrageous thing of let them buy it and then forgive the debts that they now own, let's just forgive them beforehand. But obviously that's not going to receive much media coverage because of the strikes in northwestern Nigeria.
Hashtag stay woke. Hashtag stay noticing.
Come on, StarsDem. Don't think I'm not. I'm drawing the dots in. I'm just trying to paint a constellation for the StarsDem. So on to our final topic for the state of play, which is an interesting one because I also don't think that it's hit the headlines in the way it maybe should have, but it's a brief story that we'll talk on. So Thailand has released 18 Cambodian prisoners of war 3 days after the two countries agreed to a renewed ceasefire to end weeks of deadly border clashes. The border clashes between Thailand and Cambodia reignited earlier this month following a breakdown in the ceasefire deal that the United States President Donald Trump and Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim helped to broker to halt a previous round of conflict in July. So we can see sort of the efficacy and the efficacy of Donald Trump's deals. In the long term, the two sides will need to resolve their long-standing dispute over how to demarcate an 800-kilometre section of their joint border. The disagreement, again, dates back to the early 1900s when France occupied Cambodia. So that's just reporting from Al Jazeera there. And two things struck my mind here when I looked at this. Is one, it just brought up how sort of hollow these deals that Trump's running around the world making are. You know, he wrote a whole book on art of the deal, and we're now seeing that play out. It really is art rather than a science. But also how underpublicized certain stories are, or sort of the impression of certain countries we have in the UK. And a lot of this is down to tourism rather than the reality of it. We don't actually interact with the real material nature of what's going on in certain parts of the world. But yeah, just an interesting story.
Yeah. So I guess you're sort of referring to the fact that a lot of British people see Thailand as just a kind of hedonistic escape where they can go and just do like a bunch of nonsense without actually kind of engaging with the deeper kind of structures going on.
Not even, I wouldn't even try to be like more pejorative, say hedonistic. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just more just like, I think maybe because there's a lot of economic enfranchisement from Thailand presenting itself as a tourist-friendly place. We just don't think of Thailand as like a nation state in the way you might think of those that are more in the headlines politically.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. I think one thing that's interesting about this story as well, and can you just correct me on this? So because I don't want to come across as sounding quite ignorant, but obviously, so it's across the border, and then the Cambodia and Thai people, right? Are they just practically the same in terms of ethnic heritage?
No. I mean, there's a lot of ethnic differences within both Thailand and Cambodia.
I know within both of them, but I'm saying, you know how, because of course, like a lot of these border conflicts have
similar histories. About that is, it's actually strange to say because a lot of times people justify these conflicts on ethnic lines. And so, for example, like the Somaliland one, it's like they might say that we come from a different, I think it's the Isak or the Ishak tribe that Somalilanders would claim that they're descended from. But I don't know how much that actually holds weight in terms of defining state boundaries because there's ethnic variation. And I was actually watching a really interesting video by like a genetic scientist on this recently.
Yeah.
There's ethnic variations along loads of different axes, along loads of different geographies. So as far as that being a justification for a whole different sort of populace or demos, I don't know how much weight that holds. But yeah, loads of ethnic there. And it's like relative to me and you, yeah, perhaps certain of these regions are homogenous over a
like less,
weight.
yeah.
Yeah, but internally, the ethnic variation is vast.
No, okay, no, that definitely makes sense. I was just thinking because, you know, like, I mean, history repeats itself, and there's a lot of these very similar type of border conflicts that exist across the world, which is just fascinating to understand the kind of overlaps and the reasons as to why such things exist.
It seems like the middle of the Venn diagram right now is like colonialism.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I was about to say, right? Like the fact that some countries, or like the Western kind of neo-Europes, so your England, US, France can come in and just carve up borders. And the way in which they carve it up has some really deeper, longer lasting legacies. And it's no wonder then that the children of colonialism then basically just flock back to the kind of countries which did that in the first place. And now we have to deal with that kind of lasting legacy of this mass movement of people. It's mad.
Yeah, and when you talk about the sort of drawing up of borders, you know, there's Darren Acemoglu, interesting theorist, has some good thoughts, has some bad ones, but there is one of his. It's not necessarily his, but he's quite famous for it. The idea of power projection, and I always think about this when it comes to sort of African states because it's a bit clearer. But a lot of times when states are colonies, they are carved up in a way that supports expropriation or extraction to the metropolis. So this would imply having a massive sort of port city. and centralization of like urban areas around like the coastlines, and then you just want to stretch as far inland as you can, to extract as much resources as possible. But what this means then in sort of trying to organize the state for its own sake post independence is that there's oftentimes a struggle to project power. So if you are like the state architecture or the state agent, you want to be able to project power to all of your borders, like all the way to the end of your borders, so that you're able to have like an organized and controlled country. But if you think about instances of states crossing over like geographical land masses and geographical intersectors, be they mountains, rivers, lakes, deserts, it then becomes really hard to have like a uniform state infrastructure and be able to project power that far. So the example I bring up when I talk about a lot of Africa is you'll look around, love is a weird word, I'm a bit of a geography nerd, but you can look around like Africa and you'll see there's effectively 2 capitals for every country. So you will have like Lagos and Abuja. And sometimes, well, obviously, sometimes you will have the centralized capital is the official capital now, but you also see the colonial capital. So you have like Nairobi and Mombasa in Kenya. And you can literally go on Google Maps right now and look around the whole of Africa and see that pattern. But similarly here, we're seeing like a problem of power projection. So consolidating power as a state all the way up to your borders. This is why you get a lot of border conflicts and contestations.
No, fascinating. Little teaching from Mr. Noti's 9.
It's interesting there because even like I was hiking around the Balkans last year, and I was going through what's called the accursed mountains, and it was cursed because I got food poisoning. But I was walking across this like mountain ridge, and on the left hand side was Montenegro, and on the other hand side was Kosovo, and I was thinking, wow, this is so interesting to see, because I actually now understand like how I'm starting to understand how like polities and nations actually just develop naturally. Because I was thinking,
It's
yeah,
like
it makes sense.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it just makes sense that like them man, you stay over them sides, and like you just didn't come over these like mountains, because it would just be long to just be, do you know what I mean? But then as we get new technology, and maybe we're getting into a bit of Marxism here, base and superstructure, as we develop new technology to be able to transverse these more efficiently, it makes more sense to have like a more of a realized state over things that previously wouldn't have been able to function as homogenous.
Yeah, and I think in the theories as well, we're so sort of used to thinking that state formation really plays out along the lines of how the liberal philosophers think about it. So Rousseau, John Locke, even Hobbes to some extent, that there's some sort of like social contract that people get into. So the idea that is once upon a time when the state of nature, and we all sort of come together and like harmoniously agree that actually, you know what, we need to have a state to basically, you know, protect our private contracts, our agreements, our private property, and then therefore somehow it emerges. But really, the kind of realist notion of that is actually that, you know, it's called that actually, I think it's the bandit theory in political philosophy, and that's actually just how we actually how the state actually formulated in the first place is really just we're just roving individuals in our little tribes, and it's actually the rich kind of more powerful tribes that come together, and they're just stealing from people all the time. And so really how these kind of contracts actually emerge is an agreement to say, you know what, can you offer me protection and I'll just pay you a bit of like a lump sum. And so then these kind of roving bandits actually start, you know, carving up territory for themselves. And I think that's a much like better way of understanding how states form in the first place than the kind of pretty notions that we have. Because I don't know, I think like because we inherit so much of like the liberal ideals and philosophy, we can think about the world in a way that's actually not really like that in reality. So I think this conversation touches on a lot of interesting
No,
topics like that.
I agree, and it's like I like the roving bandit one. I'm familiar with that theory. I think when you look at like the liberal social contract theory around like statehood or statecraft, I think I'm always drawn to the idea. Max Weber has this idea of a state as a body with the legitimate use of the legitimate monopoly on the use of violence in a certain area. And it sounds a bit crude, but it is quite important that we like come back to these first principle terms and understanding what a state actually does. But then I'm also drawn to this idea from Hannah Arendt when in On Violence, she says sort of violence can never be legitimate, but it can be justified. But what that actually means is that ex ante, going into something, you can't actually all consent to violence because it has like certain qualitative nature that isn't understood. But ex post, based on the outcomes, ends means justification, we can justify violence. And that's really what we have to come to terms when we look at the states that are present in the world today. It's actually hard to legitimize a state ex ante going into it because it incorporates violence and it incorporates the expression of something that doesn't yet exist. But afterwards, we can justify it based on certain whatever criteria, whatever we think it actually provides.
So remember that StarsDem, that's a Northstar first principle. States are basically just institutions with a monopoly on violence.
I
Full
think
stop.
because we're snowed in this season, I think people are getting a bit more of an insight into me and Sean's normal conversations, which like are actually a lot less grounded in like day-to-day politics, but obviously want to provide that sort of utility to people that want to keep up to date with what's going on in the world. And of course, we just want to bring it back to the reminder that there's a story about Cambodia and the prisoners of war and the contestations around state lines that are going on between Cambodia and Thailand. We'll leave it there for the state of play, and we're going to get into, for the first time ever, a little Q&A.
Let's do it, bro.
All right, welcome to a very special echo chamber where we'll be doing a Q&A. Sean, how are you feeling about this?
I'm gassed, man. I'm just surprised that people actually had questions to ask us. Do you know what I'm saying?
We've got bare questions in it, so we've narrowed it down, just in interest of time. But we'll try and answer like all of them at a later date. We'll probably do like Q&A maybe each quarter. And I didn't check. Like I guess we won't say people's names because we didn't actually clarify whether we're going to say people's names or not.
Yeah,
but shout out to everyone that left the questions. So the first one, just getting a little bit of a nice one here. Favorite travel destination?
Well, for both of us, right, our collective travel destination, there's only ever been one, so there you go. So by definition, worst and best, it's definitely Morocco. A very spiritual, very emotional trip, very
Generational trip.
definitely. Just because you can do a bit of everything, right? You can just go see some good nature, see some good people, get good food, etc. My personal one is definitely Jordan. So I did a solo travel there. It's all over my Instagram, so you can go check it out if you want. Cheeky plug. But honestly, it was such a breathtaking place. And also, I think it's really important to go to places like that because, I mean, we're talking about the kind of constructivist nature of states. Jordan is basically just Palestine, right? 70% of Jordanian's population are Palestinian. And so a lot of people, because of the conflict, actually don't go Jordan anymore. And they really rely on a tourism industry. And so going there, I met so many wonderful Bedouins, saw so many great sights. And actually you can see Palestine in the distance. And yeah, it felt very spiritual. So that's me. What about you?
I met the Princess of Jordan a couple months
When?
ago.
When? What the hell?
Shout out to her when I was in Munich.
Oh, is it? Humble flex or
Shout out to her, innit?
at your talking shop? At your rich talking shop, doing nothing.
But for me, for people that even want the backstory, like Morocco, if there's no Morocco, there's no Northstar, by the way. Because me and Sean and one of our other boys, but me and Sean were there a bit earlier, went to Morocco after he finished uni and I was in my, second year ever. And spiritual journey, because it was before Sean reverted. It was when he was having a lot of those awakenings. We went and camped in the desert overnight. Like, it was a big bonding sesh. So Morocco, obviously, lifetime trip. But for me, come on now, like, because me, I actually do be traveling for like a little bit, but one that I was thinking of is like my favorite hiking I ever did was in Slovakia. I went to the Upper Tatras and I went there in the winter season, and the whole mountain range was closed for winter. Like, you weren't allowed to go out and hike because it all just snowed over. But obviously, you know your boy in it, like bump train, bump mountain. Like I went out into the mountains on my one.
You're
like,
so cool, bro. You're so cool.
No, but let me get gassed though. It was actually so sick. Like, if you scroll back, it'll be on my Instagram at some point somewhere. But sensational trip. And then also I got a shout out Dominica, like my family's home country, serious country there. Like pure nature island, green as anything, jungle, forest, good food, all of that.
Or if you want a good Caribbean experience, just go to Trinidad. It's a better island.
Bro, I've been Trinidad more recent than you, so what we say.
Small island boy over there.
Anywhere you want to go?
Anyway, do I want to go? Oh, that's a good question, actually. I think Brazil, that would be just extraordinary. I think I always have a sort of envision myself doing kick-ups on the beach in Brazil with some Brazilians, but that's about
You
it.
can do kick-ups.
Come on,
I need to see them kick-ups in London.
couple. I can do a couple. By couple, I mean two. But what about you?
Somaliland. On to the next question. So someone's asked for us, do we have some theory and learning recommendations, like to understand sort of political theory? So one that I actually referenced earlier in the podcast, there's a brilliant page called E-IR, which is a treasure trove of like international relations theory. And they have like textbooks in there to help understand sort of the fundamental underpinnings of international relation, but they also have like a modern blog that's a bit more topical. I also think for me, I went to like a strict Catholic school, and I kind of got introduced to philosophy through, I did like classical Greek and Latin. And the book that I read, very much in the spirit of Thomas Aquinas and these Catholic scholars, was An Introduction to Philosophy by Jacques Maritain. Not that there's anything sort of like conclusive or sort of foundational, but it was really interesting for me, where he sort of outlines philosophy as the study of first principles, and then sort of science as the study of second principles, and the arts as the study of sort of tertiary and quaternary principles. How about yourself, Sean?
Yeah, I think for the theory learning one specifically, I'm actually not going to give books but resources. And that's because I think that like there's so much to start with. So the thing that you should start with if you're interested in getting into a topic is just the one that you're
Quran.
interested in. What'd you say?
Quran.
Quran. Yeah, I mean that is a great
The
it's not even a
best, I might
book.
say.
I think it's reality, ontological reality. But I would say the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. So it's an amazing online resource where any philosophical topic you have a question about or any philosophical thinker, just type their name and then Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, let it come up. It's like the Wikipedia of philosophy. And the reason why this is good though is because unlike Wikipedia, only academics, and usually it's actually like what some of the best academics in that field can actually edit and contribute to it. So definitely check that out. I also think the Oxford short introductions are really good just to kind of
Yeah,
get up.
back in the day, I was rinsing them.
Yeah, exactly. Just to get into the kind of basic understanding of some of these topics because you're not going to be an expert on everything, but become an expert on the things that you like. So that's my advice.
Yeah, and I agree with Sean as well. Like, 'cause I get asked for advice on like sort of learning or whatever it might be from a lot of people. And one thing I always say is people probably from the outside in have this image that it's a really clean endeavor, and you sort of sit down and you just read and you read these books, and no, you got to get down and dirty. So any resource that works, it works. So like, I love like podcasts. I love like YouTube. There's a podcast called Theory and Philosophy. This guy's actually a goat. Like, when I was reading Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, I was watching like his like 6-part series on it, and even borrowing from Hegel. There's George Friedrich Hegel or George Wilhelm Hegel, who has the this idea that you can literally start from anywhere and ascend in your understanding to like universal spirit. Put very crudely, people don't get in the comments and say that I've butchered that, but I think that's true about learning. They literally start anywhere and just get interested. People
Yeah,
say,
and
"Oh, the most
okay.
interesting people are those that are interested."
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think get out of this kind of like notion that you have to go straight to the original text straight away. Like
There's
if you
no
want to learn
because
about
there's no original text.
like if you want to learn about Marx, yeah, you don't just have to go straight to Capital and read that straight. No, read some selected writings on it, read some because the modern day academics now are literally like some of their whole careers are literally dedicated to just explaining original thinkers, pointing out their kind of inconsistencies. There's so many inconsistencies riddled amongst all of them, and actually kind of like reformulating their theories, and they explain it in ways that are very simple. To understand. So make sure you do that as
Honestly,
well.
you got to think about like intellectual endeavors like it's like the universe, stars in the sky, constellations, start from anywhere. People treat it like oh, I want to start from episode one. They want to go read like the ancient Sumerian texts, like, but literally just start from anywhere. And then sort of in that vein, I guess this kind of covers as well. Someone also asked like, how can we develop our critical thinking skills? I think it's just sort of in that similar vein of just get interested in things, like
Yeah.
evaluate, reevaluate, and also don't just read as if like this is divinely ordained. Unless you know you're Muslim and you're reading the Quran, or you're British and you're Catholic and reading the Bible or whatever. Even though Catholics don't follow the Bible, but whatever. But don't read these texts who like from these scholars and think, oh, this is my new opinion. Here's my new thought process. Actually, think to yourself like, can I sort of digest this and respond in my own head? Like, can I read this and think, not sure about that?
Yeah, I think another thing that I like to do is my little Wikipedia wormhole per every different
Yeah, come
thinker
on.
I come across, because when thinkers are writing, they have an intention and they have a purpose to what they're writing. So you have to really understand the history and the time period and context in which they are writing to understand why their views are the way they are. So actually, even if you take like some of the Islamic scholars, right? So now Ibn Taymiyyah, for the Muslims who know him out here,
Come on.
he's one of the most popular Islamic philosophers that are right now in this time. Okay. But when he was writing back in his day, this guy was locked up because people thought he was a heretic. They thought he was an extremist. They thought he went so far against the grain of the main Islamic scholarship. And you need to only a quick Wikipedia read or some understanding of the background context in which he was writing makes you understand why that was the case, because he was so scathing of the fact that the Muslim kind of political empire at the time was basically crumbling in front of his eyes. So he took a very hardline stance to his Islam. Whereas when Islam was flourishing, you get the thinkers of like the Sufi thinkers like Ibn Arabi, etc. And that's just a little like tidbit for kind of the Muslim thinkers out there, but the Muslim kind of viewers out there. But yeah.
Come on. See, we can actually bait out who said this, but George Aberoni, who people remember from one of our early episodes, he is the like ex-Oxford Union president who's in the headlines for celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. But shout out George there. But like that's how people know him. Like, but he hopped in the question. He said, "Give us an Oxford College tier list." George, what a dead question, blood. Just wasting internet.
Yeah, I mean, they're all good. You know
Like,
what I mean?
how many trees died for you to ask that question? But no, as in, like, obviously, me and Sean went to Oxford. Sean went to Mansfield. I went to St Catherine's College. I didn't even visit Oxford beforehand. It's weird because I kind of am upset that I probably didn't grow up with like this dreaming of Oxford and like the spires and all that kind of thing. I went online and looked up like what's good for PPE. Just applied to that college.
Yeah, I never knew about Oxford until I actually saw an Oxford Union debate actually by Carla, and thought, wow, this guy's spitting. Like, where is he actually like debating? Obviously, Noah famously has just a bit of a thing against the Carla. I don't know why,
No,
because he wants to be
I got
so
enough love for a Carla,
because he wants to
but
be
it's just like
contrarian.
I'm not. No, I got enough love for a Carla, but just I ain't listening to that. Like Sean, yeah, he'd be listening to a Carla in the shower. He puts on in the bath even like a couple candles, like get some bubble bath going, listen to some Carla.
Come on, signed copy of Natives sitting on my desk at home. Um,
Fair enough.
but yeah, I think with
Have
Oxford,
you got a signed copy of the Quran?
this guy, fam. Anyways, I think with the Oxford stuff, like it's not the be all or end all of like intellectual academia. If you're interested in Oxford and you're interested in different colleges, there's literally tests online where you can just put in your personality and it picks you a college or just the things that you want. Because think of it, it's just a place that you need to live. That's all it really is. If you want an inclusive, kind of forward-thinking one, Mansfield was the one I went to and was pretty good at that.
To be fair though, one thing I would say is don't be applying to them. Like someone I went to school with actually he got pulled to like St. Bennett's Hall, and then it was like a little house, and it got shut down while he was there. Like all them kind of weird ones that you just never heard of. Like
They're
just don't watch
called
them.
PPHs, permanent private halls. But yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. Anyway, but okay, dream collab.
All right, should we go
Carla
one
featuring
one after
Sean.
next? Just name it.
Yeah, calm.
All right. For me, top one, Zora Mamdani. Go.
For me, top one, Amartya Sen.
Ooh, okay. All
Yeah,
right, second
even
one.
he's very old now. I think he's in the 90s probably. Yeah, you go second one.
Dr. Miriam Francois.
Strong.
Very strong. Go on.
And me, I went for like a bit of a. I obviously didn't want to think of just the people that we like, sort of our heroes. I went for David Cameron.
Okay, cool.
He needs to come sit with the Northstar boys and explain what he done.
All right, let me just have like an offshoot of that one then. Baroness Saida Warsi. It was just,
Mm,
I was saying, because there's a
yeah.
lot of smoke to be given. There's a lot of credit to be
Grudge
given. A lot of
match.
smoke to be
Grudge
given.
match.
There you go.
I'll even throw in my last one as well. Like I think it would be sensational to sit down with Greta Thunberg.
Ah, what a gangster. I'd
Bro,
love that.
literally.
I'd
Like
love
people talk
that.
about street cred, yeah. No one runs the streets like Greta.
Bro, as in,
Like,
unironically, she's one of the bravest people I think I've ever seen just touch like the internet.
nah, she is. And you know what it is, yeah? I think she got so villainized by like what do you call it, legacy media when she first hopped off the stoop, innit? That like me and someone who's just kind of like young or whatever, and probably a bit cynical, you're thinking, oh, who's this tree hugging this and the third? But as like you know the ones where it's like as you realize more, you clock, nah, she's cold. Like
Innit?
she is like they were, and even the fact they were villainizing her back then, it's like she just persevered. Yeah,
Malala, my
back herself.
sister. Malala, my sister. That's what you should have been, man.
Yeah, coulda, shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
We've got a couple more before we wrap up. Do you see yourself pursuing a political career?
Honestly, I think like as the more you kind of study this thing, the more you realize it's actually just so like horrible. So I don't know. I think all my life, put it this way, all my life I've been asked and people have told me, "Oh, do you want to do X, Y, Z? You should be in these spaces." But to be honest, like I think as a Muslim as well, you need to just check your intentions, particularly if you
Yeah,
make a decision like that, because political careerism is so ego driven, and so I don't know who knows in it, but I think as I've sort of began to mature, I see myself playing a different sort of role in this kind of political space. What about you though?
No, no, fair enough. I think one thing I want to say is like, obviously, we appreciate the question, but we're trying to kind of push against this idea that there's a delineation between politics and then like your personal life. It's like we are currently pursuing a political career with our media platform. We have had a political career in terms of our consulting work and managing campaigns. But as far as it's like Sean says, sort of the ego-driven aspects to sort of public
But you know
politics.
what they mean. Yeah, they mean
I
that.
know, of course, I know what they mean.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to bring out the fact that everyone can
Like
have
we
political
are.
careers.
Like we are.
Precisely. Like when you see people that are community organizers in whatever capacity that might be, that have companies that do that, they are pursuing a political career. But in terms of like going into public politics, obviously, just like Sean, I grew up with, you're going to be prime minister. Even, brother, the other day I was at my nan's, I put a podcast on so she could see it. My auntie's there. My auntie just goes, Noah's going to be prime minister. I'm thinking, what? Like, can I just podcast? Like, what? Because I'm on YouTube. Like, now I'm going to be prime minister.
Bro,
But no,
both of us as well, just Mayor of London allegations forever and ever. Like we just keep
bro,
getting that.
that's the one where I think like I would do that for the cause. Because I don't actually think these like, I never like really aspired to any of these roles. But Mayor of London, if I looked into it more, that could be a vibe.
You,
But
you bump TFL all the time, so that's just gonna come out straight away.
impossible. My Amex never declines. But is this the final question? Yeah, we'll go for the final question. Someone asked for our top 5 books, and Sean asked if this could be shortened to top 3.
I've got 5 though. I've got 5. So what now?
Go on, they did it 5. Like,
Okay, cool. First one, yeah, is A Secular Age by Charles Taylor. And that's because he's the first philosopher to actually break down and understand this thing we call modernity. Because I think a lot of people take a lot of assumptions for granted around, particularly when they try to understand the world in the here and now. And he really breaks down this idea, or pushing back on this notion that, okay, the secularization thesis is that as modernity progresses and technology advances, then there's an increasing disenchantment of the world because we're basically shaking off ancient fables to explain how the world actually works. And so there's not really a space for religion anymore. Charles Taylor actually says, no, that's not really what's happening. Actually, secularism is about the idea that there's a realm of contestable ideas. So that once upon a time, believing in God in like the 1500s was just something taken as a fact, but now it's one of many ideas. And actually this is really fascinating to kind of understand how we got here, how we got here, not why this is the case or if this is good or bad, but where's the world going. So I think that's really, really good and it's really fascinating. I also read earlier this year something called Desert Encounter, which is a journal diary of a revert to Islam, surprise, surprise, of a Scandinavian revert who travels across North Africa. And
bro, that's
basically,
literally your story.
yeah, something like that. But it's really good because it's in the 1930s. It actually portrays a very different light of Islam compared to the Orientalist literature that came out at the time. And it's one of the only remaining pieces of evidence of the Italian genocide in Libya. So one of our kind of Northstar collective heroes is Omar Mukhtar, the famous kind of the fascist resistance fighter who's also a Quran teacher. And he even talks about how him in that and coming across people talking about him at the time. And I think it's such a brilliant snapshot into history of a history that's not really told. There's also, I guess, I'd say René Guénon's Crisis of the Modern World. So he's a perennialist thinker and he has a kind of a spiritual critique of basically what modernity is as well. I think you guys will kind of see a theme of the things I'm interested in reading. But I think that's really good because unlike any other kind of political philosophy, what he captures about modernity is increasing kind of mechanical nature. It's increasing kind of alienating nature to the spirit and to the soul is something that people, regardless of their religious beliefs, or even if they see themselves as religious, will relate to a lot. And then finally, the last quick two, The Lonely Londoners by Samuel Selvin. I've actually seen the theatre play twice. That's actually an Indo-Trinidadian writer, so shout out to the Indo-Trinis, who writes about the kind of Windrush experience of Londoners who came to London. and the kind of alienation they felt in that Windrush period, and then finally the Fate of Abraham about how Islam misunderstands the West by Peter Oben. That's really good as a canon of understanding, how it came to be that Islam became the perennial enemy of the world and the West. That was a bit long, but there
Yeah,
you
well,
go.
no light reading, just everything heavy, heavy.
Yeah, you know what? I don't really read like light stuff, I don't see a
Now,
point
fair,
in it.
fair play, fair
Yeah.
play. No, for me, obviously, number one is going to be Rich Dad Poor Dad. Probably number two will be 48 Laws of Power. How to Win Friends and no, no, no. But you know what I'm going to say? It's interesting that you quoted all like non-fiction books because I've got and also this has been my biggest year of reading. I can't even. I've been on a mad tick this year, but people need to be reading fiction.
No, it's
You've
true.
got,
It is true.
bro, it's
Because
fiction more important than non-fiction. How about that?
no, I actually kind of agree with that, and I think obviously that sounds ironic coming from me, but I'll tell you what, the one I've enjoyed the most is Desert Encounter, and that's because it actually reads like a fiction.
It's a narrative, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But go on then, land. Let's hear
So
it.
for me, whatever. Where should we go? I started the year big, but from probably right now, like my favorite, like maybe my goat. Another Country by James Baldwin. Big serious book. Sort of a medley cast in New York, dealing with issues of sort of isolation, minority rights with like the sort of gay and like black people in New York. But just it's like cool. Those are the themes it's dealing with. But Baldwin is just unpicking like character development on a different level. Like he is a real G. And even like one of my favorite books of all times is Giovanni's Room, which I recommend to everyone. Anyone that get their hands on Giovanni's Room, read that. Second one, Season of Migration North by Tayeb Saleh. He's a Sudanese writer, and there's a beautiful book about a Sudanese man interacting with his life and fate in the UK and back home, and drawing ties between the two. But it's fascinating and sort of brilliant pictures being drawn out and descriptions there. There's a brilliant quote from it that I sent to you, Sean, at the time when I read it about. The people of the Sahel or the people of the desert being different from those of the abundant nature of Western Europe, not because they are sort of gluttonous for the greenery of Western Europe, but because they're able to sort of survive on these sort of parched and arid lands of the desert. He's also got a really good short story. Literally, if anyone wants to read something just quickly straight after this podcast, go look up A Handful of Dates by Tayeb Saleh. It's literally a couple pages, but it's so profound. Third one, let's go for, I'm actually looking at my bookshelf right now. Let's go for Butcher's Crossing by John Williams. Again, that some people hate on me for this take. John Williams, classic American author, very sort of specific style of writing, but I love him. Like one of my favorite books when I was younger used to be Stoner by John Williams. And I got around to reading Butcher's Crossing this year. So good. Like I recommend this one. It's about a buffalo hunt, but obviously wider themes around like economics here, which are just, it's such a sick book. Fourth one, let's go for, I read quite a lot of Toni Morrison this year. Let's go for Sula by Toni Morrison. Really cool book. I wrote about it in a piece I did called Tainted Tableaus. But I would say that at the moment I'm reading Dostoevsky, and people would say that he's the master of like character development. I wouldn't actually say Toni Morrison is brilliant at character development. I say what she's brilliant at is character design. And by that I mean she doesn't like sort of intricately sort of bring out these characters piece by piece and build them up brick by brick. And what that can mean sometimes is you sometimes feel a bit remote or estranged from certain characters that you don't have a recognition of in your own life. But because she designs these characters so poignantly and accurately fitted for the world in which they exist, when you come across them, it's like, right, I know this person. So I'll go for Sula. I recently read Jazz, which the jury's out on. And then finally, should we go for another fiction one? Or should we give a little bit of, I'll even give a little bit of an in-between.
Yeah, go on then, yeah.
Poétique ou la Relation by Edouard Glissant. So he, honestly, loving this guy. He's a Martinician philosopher, and Poetics of Relation it's like no book I've actually read before. He is of the tradition of like sort of negritude, and he interlocutes a lot with Achille Mbembe and people that are the founding father of necropolitics. But yeah, he's a Martinician philosopher in the past sort of 30, 40 years. And in this, he designs an understanding of civilizations and thinking that is poetic rather than what we might call prosaic, or sort of, it kind of intersects with your discussion of modernity. He's kind of rejecting this empiricist or epistemological elitism that flows from modernity and looking at what and even not even to, I'm trying to ground it, but what's like scholars like Ouattara and Deleuze might call is like a rhizomatic, a lateral, a horizontal way of diffuse way of developing ideas. So poetics of relation, it was just a reformulation of how I understand a lot of the ideas I interact with and how we can actually develop knowledge. We've got to think about mangrove trees more. That's okay. What I'll leave people with. But yeah, that is a heavy book list we've given people, like those 10 books. So people honestly, like, if I give anything to start with, just start with Tayyib Saleh, A Handful of Dates. It's like 2 pages.
Strong. There you go. Do you know what it is?
Concludes. Oh, go ahead.
No, like maybe you're just not a performative male because you're not really performing. You're really reading this, innit? So
as in, yeah, like imagine be reading
male, innit?
Yeah, just but at the end of the day, like, shout out Judith Butler. Like, I guess all genders performative, so we're all performative males. But we'll leave it there for the inaugural Northstar Q&A. I think there's been a cracking episode, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a bit self-absorbed to say that because we just talked about ourselves for the last half an hour. But,
I guess that part, but I mean more like I've actually just enjoyed it. Like the global state of play, the different ideas we're bringing up, intersecting the theory with the material. You can't complain.
Yeah.
I'm sure people will maybe, but and if you do complain, drop the comments. But it's been cracking, and what a great way for us to end the year and for you guys to open up the year, because we'll be putting this out come the new year. But honestly, all the StarsDem, I cannot appreciate you enough. And it's come from me. Like, Sean was famous before this. Me, this is my first time I put myself out there, bro. I love each and every one of you stars. I love you.
No, for sure. Thank you guys so much. And all I can say, and I keep saying it again and again, we're going even harder in 2026. So be ready, lock in. We're going to take maybe a tiny break, but our first...
next week we're not here.
Yeah, but our first episode back is going to be a big one. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, big.